Hey everybody, Drew Dinkmeyer of DailyRoto.com here with our 2019 NFL DFS Optimizer tutorial. We've made some improvements and some enhancements to our Optimizer that we're excited to share with the public this season, and these series of Optimizer tutorials will help you get acquainted with our product. This first Optimizer tutorial is going to be a more basic review of the settings available to you while constructing lineups through our Optimizer. We will have subsequent tutorials that dig in on some of the new features and a little bit more detail on some of the more complex features of how to use the Optimizer. But this one will be very basic, very vanilla. If you're just logging on to try to make a few lineups, use the projections to your advantage, this will be the one for you. If you want to start using more of the advanced tools and settings to help build more diversification or more correlation in your lineups, we'll have individual tutorials on the features to help you there. So let's start with the most basic. When you get to the NFL Optimizer tutorial, the first thing you'll be asked to do is select a slate, which you can do up in the upper left-hand corner. You can select from Fanduel, Yahoo, DraftKings, so on and so forth. Once you select your slate, all of the salaries will populate for that slate, along with all these games at the top window here. You might get them in the right sidebar, depending on kind of your screen display. You can also choose that in the settings spot as well. But the first thing you want to understand is that all of our projections are customizable, both at the game level and at the individual player level. So you can see all of these fields can be editable. At the team level, it's team totals, plays, their run pass distribution, their touchdown rush pass distribution. At the player level, it's categories like their market share of rushing attempts, their yards per carry, their market share of rushing touchdowns, their market share of targets, their yards per target, their reception percentage, their market share of reception TDs, their public ownership percentage, so on and so forth. We fill out all these categories with our best expectations, and certainly our projections have done very well over the years. You're welcome to trust them. But if you do have a difference of opinion, you can simply edit the projection, any of the individual fields, and it will adjust the overall projection. So for example, if you were to edit Kansas City's implied total from 27.8 and go higher, you will see Patrick Mahomes' projection jump. It starts at 22.15, but as we take the total higher to say 33, the projection increases to nearly 24 Fanduel points. You can always arrow back, or you can save any of these edits that you make. You can also do this at the player level as well for any of these individual customizable fields. Opening up the settings tab on the right, you'll see the ability to create your own settings templates. So by using this drop down and creating a new setting, you can create whatever setting you'd like and name it whatever you'd like for future references and future slates. When you do this and you make edits to any of these individual fields now, they tie back into this saved configuration, and you can simply save that configuration up at the top there. Within these settings, there's plenty of ways you can edit different exposure levels or increase diversification in your projection set to help you optimize lineups and create the types of lineups that you're looking for. The important thing to understand about an optimizer is it is simply a template to create lineups. And the template is using the rules that you're putting in it along with the projections that we provide or you've edited to create the most optimal lineups possible based on those rules. So you are in control of setting the rules and how you want the optimizer to act. Understanding what your decision points are and how that impacts the lineups that you create is one of the things we'll cover in some of the more advanced tutorials. But we'll quickly run through this to give you an idea of some of the levers that you have at your disposal with the DailyRoto NFL DFS Optimizer. So one of the first things you can do is you can edit exposures at the positional level or all if you simply wanted to make sure that you had no more than 35% of any one player in all of your lineups. You would simply edit the all field, click the all button, and it will apply directly to all players. That means that that is an exposure cap. We only have exposure maximums. We do not believe in exposure minimums as it constrains optimizers from making the best lineups possible. The shuffle feature we will talk about in more detail, but this is simply a feature that allows for a little bit more diversification by making it more or less likely for a player to, make it less likely for a player to appear in a lineup that has been used before. The higher the shuffle, the less likely that player is to keep getting in lineups. This helps spread out the projections a little bit and create a little bit more diversification. Similarly, the volatility field, that simply adjusts a player's projection by a certain percentage. You can do this at each of the QB or running back or wide receiver or tight end, any of the positional levels. And what it will do is if you make this, let's say 10% at the QB level, the volatility will simply say, we're going to create a distribution of projections for for all of these players, all these QBs, that is plus or minus 10% of their current projection. So in the case of Patrick Mahomes, this would be 22.15 plus 2.215 would be the high end, minus 2.215 would be the low end, and that would create a range of somewhere between 20 to 24.3 fantasy points that is used for each individual lineup run. So what this does is it helps create some more diversification in your lineups as well. Again, we'll have individual tutorials that more clearly show the impacts of these decisions. Your minimum projection is simply the minimum number of fantasy points that you'd like to use at each position to get those players into your player pool. This is something that you can use if you're concerned about the floors of certain players and you don't want too many of those min-priced players sneaking into your lineups. You can set simply minimum projection thresholds for them to meet. Stacking is the ability to create lineups that are stacked, meaning your quarterback is paired with a player either from his own team or from an opponent's team, and you can simply see here that you are able to choose whether you want it to be a wide receiver, a running back, a wide receiver or running back, a wide receiver or tight end, or just any of the above. You can do that with the opponents as well to easily create stacks or game stack situations right off the top. You can also choose how many teammates you want in a single lineup without their QB. You can set this down to 1 if you just want to make sure that anytime you have a lineup, there will not be 2 skill players from the same team without a quarterback, or you can make it 2 or 3 or 4, however many you want. You have the ability to correlate with running back plus defense stacking. If you'd like to turn that little button on, that'll make sure that whoever you use as one of your running backs, a defense will be chosen from one of those running backs to use in your defensive slot. The settings to run, the number of lineups, the number of uniques, simply the number of players that are different from the previous lineup that's created. Your max public ownership, this is a field that you can use to highlight the overall ownership level of your lineup. So for instance, you would simply sum up all of the individual projected ownerships at each of the positions, and it would not be able to go up above, in this case, 900, which obviously with 9 spots you would never get there, but you can lower that to make more contrarian lineups as well. You can choose whether to have offensive players versus your defense in this DVO tab. You can choose what flex positions you'd like to consider for sites that use a flex, and you can use a salary range here as well. If you ever are concerned about the bumps that you've made or the edits that you've made and you want to clear any of them, you can simply clear all the bumps in all configuration levels, or you can delete this settings configuration that you've made to simply get back to square one. From there, once you have kind of all your settings picked, which right now we have very vanilla settings, you can simply choose Run Optimizer and it will run the optimizer. You'll get this little processing screen that shows you the ability of how long in the process it is in terms of constructing the lineups. It'll move pretty quickly when we're requesting just 20 lineups and 1 unique player, and these will be the optimal lineups based on the settings we've had, which the only constraint we've put on here is we don't want players appearing in more than 35% of our lineups. So you can click on the players here, see the exposures, and you see no player is above 35%, but quite a few of them are in that 5% range. You can see all the player exposures by any of the individual positions here and how you have that exposure broken down, and you can of course download those lineups to be able to upload them to the site of your choosing, in this case Fanduel. You would simply open that CSV and we'll have a quick tutorial that covers how to upload those lineups onto Fanduel or DraftKings as well in our future tutorials. But the idea here is to make this all as customizable for you as you'd like, to be able to generate the lineups that make sense for you with the types of builds and rules that you're putting in place into the optimizer. By being able to do that, you can see the lineups that are generated here, and you can simply upload these to Fanduel, which again we'll take you through in a different tutorial. One of the new features that we've added, and the last feature that we'll cover quickly in this introductory tutorial as we go back to the projections, is we've added the upload feature this year. So if you do not like using our projections, or you use a different projection source but you really like our optimizer, you simply can choose to upload your own projections by this little arrow in the bottom left. You select the template. We will give you a template that downloads into a CSV. You simply edit the projections in this template, you re-upload them, you choose whether you would like to use DailyRoto's projection or just exclude any players that have not been edited in this file. and you have a new projection set to work off of. Once you upload projections, you will lose the customizability of the projections because we can't customize. The customizability is working off our own math that's generate our projections. So when you've edited things and uploaded projections, you will lose customizability, but you have the ability to just generate your own projections should you like, upload them here, and those will be the projections that you can work off of as your template. So you would simply save that template with all your edits, you'd choose that file, and you would upload it to go forward. So that's really the key basic features of our optimizer. We will get into the nitty-gritty in subsequent tutorials here, but we want to keep kind of this basic optimizer tutorial with all these features as relatively short as we can. We hope this is intriguing enough for you to check out some of the subsequent tutorials on individual features, and we hope it's something that makes it worthwhile joining us for this NFL DFS season. Best of luck in all your games in 2019 and into 2020, and we hope you have a successful NFL DFS season ahead.